I'm going to introduce Lina by listing her life accomplishments. Is that all right, Lina?
That would be lovely. I love listening about myself.
Yeah, I do too. No one does it for me. No one does it for me. Okay, so Lina is a psychotherapist, development expert, and founder of Stop Parenting Alone, which is a parenting education and consulting program in Miami, which is where you're based, right, Lina?
I am in Miami currently, yes.
Great. She's also a human development expert for Telemundo's national broadcasts and consultant for Mums. She's also a consultant for Mums Rising, which is an advocacy group for family rights in our nation's capital, not in Washington, right?
Yes, in the United States, yes.
Right. Lina's mission is for all parents to fall in love with their parenting journey, and she's here today to talk to us about social emotional behavior and the experience of your learners. So, Lina, I'm going to stop my voice now and pass it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Will.
Pleasure.
I just want to start off by saying thank you, and hello, hello, hello. And I've been very excited to be able to be with all of you to talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is the social emotional world of us and our students and our children. So right off the bat, what I'm going to do is I'm going to guess why you are here today, right? And I am going to take, a couple of minutes to think about what maybe some of you have been feeling and thinking, right? So some of you are confused about engaging students in learning while also being supportive. This time that we're in the midst of, all around the world, it has been incredibly difficult. So I can imagine that for all of you going into this new school year, you're hoping that you can be supportive to your students. You're scared that you will hear a story of loss or a story of frustration or disappointment from a student, and you won't be able to help them, right? So I think that I can guess that as a teacher, you don't want to feel that way. You're nervous, and that this school year is so unpredictable. You know that it's going to start and stop, and you're nervous about being able to get through your lesson plans and to get to get to teaching, right? And you feel powerless and disappointed that the school year will not be like others before. So know that I'm holding that in mind for all of you. And, I'm just guessing about this. So right off the bat, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. One, I'm going to let you all know that I'm scared and excited to be here with you guys. I like to call that scare-sighted. Write that down. It's not proper English. I know that you are English learners, teachers. However, it's a beautiful word to share with children. So tip number one, it's a beautiful word to share with children, scare-sighted, because a lot of the time we feel two feelings at the same time. Scared and excited equals scare-sighted. So, but I also want to be honest with you. I will not help you make your students happy. And I want to throw something out there. If you're a teacher, a parent, a caregiver, happiness needs to not ever be your goal when you are with a child. Why? Because what makes children happy is not necessarily in their best interest. So no, we as caregivers, as teachers, as parents need to hold in mind that we need to keep our students and our children healthy and safe emotionally and physically. So I will definitely, I'm sorry if I'm disappointed some of you, I will not be able to help you make your students happy. And number two, I cannot take your insecurities or your fears away. And I know that a lot of you came on today and now I'm completely disappointing you because you're like, but wait, what? Why can't you help me not feel so much fear and not feel so much insecurity? Because experiences of emotions are for us to manage and understand on our own. Ready? Emotions, feelings are information, not instruction. A lot of us get confused and we feel something and we feel like we have to act immediately. And actually, no, it's good to feel something and sit with it. So why I cannot take away your insecurity or your fear? Because I think it's wonderful that you're feeling a little fear and a little insecurity, because it will give you information on how to act and move forward in the school year. So, what will I do for you? Okay, so today we are going to go through the 3 skills to connect with your students in a supportive way. So, I'm going to give you 3 concrete skills on how to do that. We're going to talk about the cycle of the caregiver, and caregivers I define as parents, teachers, coaches, extended family that takes care of the children that you teach. The results of social emotional learning. We talk a lot about social emotional learning, but I find that a lot of my colleagues don't tell you what happens when we do social emotional learning well. The social emotional skills that your students, your early, your very young learners and your young learners are going through. And I'm going to predict, just like I predicted for you guys, what I think that you will be feeling, how your students may respond to this time. So let's get into right away. I'm going to give you the prize. So the 3 skills to connect with a student in a supportive way is to mirror them. What does that mean? So think about a mirror, right? When you look at yourself in the mirror, you see your reflection, right? So when you talk to a person about what you imagine that they are feeling, which I did in the first slide, I imagined what all of you were feeling, and immediately all of you were like, oh, yes, she knows what I'm thinking about. I helped you feel seen and soothed, right? Then, number 2, be vulnerable and use emotional and descriptive language. What does that mean? You share about yourself and you share about your experiences. Again, I did that also when I told you guys what I was not going to be able to do. And I told you guys how I was currently feeling. Again, you all of a sudden were like, okay, yes, put ourselves in their shoes. I saw it in the chat. That is right, Sean. So when you are vulnerable with your students and you let them know, okay, today I'm feeling a little bit off. I'm feeling a little bit not 100%. It makes you human. It helps them understand that you also make mistakes. And then that feels supportive. And finally, be predictable, right? In a young learner's classroom or a very young learner's classroom, you do that with your routine, right? And remember that young children in primary and in early childhood, they don't necessarily know the time of your routine, but they do know the pattern, right? So how was I predictable to all of you? I was predictable to all of you by letting you know exactly what we were going to do today in this webinar. So I sort of quickly modeled how to be with your students, and hopefully you felt connected with me if I did a good job. Okay, so it's time for a poll. So I'm going to open over here my little survey, and I'm going to start this poll. So pick multiple, answer the question and pick what is the emotion that you just avoid, and I call it the I shouldn't feel this way syndrome. So go. I'm going to give you a little time, and hopefully we'll get a lot of answers so we get a nice little poll. Go ahead and choose it. Looks like anger is coming in ahead. This is the feeling that most people avoid. That's right. Most of us. We have 25% of you responding to the poll. Let's keep going. I love Beatrice. It's like, I avoid all of them, all of these feelings. No, I don't want to feel any of them. Let's see. What's a close second? Frustrated. Yes. A close second to anger is frustrated, which they're cousins. They're cousins. Yes. A lot of them are. So let's keep choosing them. We're 40% of you. Once we get to like 50, we can see what are the emotions that most of you avoid. Most of you say to yourself, I shouldn't feel this way. What are they? Let's see. Okay, so number 1 is anger. Conflict. Conflict. You don't like conflict. And yet, you work with young children. That's interesting. If you work with very young learners, don't you find yourself in constant conflict? Yes, 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 I see. Sean says, I avoid the fight-flight reflex that makes me angry. Yes. Oh, Margarita, hello. She analyzes her emotions and tries not to limit herself. You're getting ahead, Margarita, but that was a good answer. So let's see. We're at 45%. Let's keep answering. Let's see how many more. All right. So I think that we're getting a pretty good marker because this is nice. This is nice for everyone. So let's see. And I also like to show this because, again, in the idea of mirror them, right? Put up a mirror and tell them what you imagine that they're thinking. And in the vulnerable, we are now being vulnerable as a group. We are sharing with one another which of these vulnerable emotions make us not 100%. Yes, rejection is incredibly difficult, and a lot of us avoid it. That's why we don't take the trip or we don't talk to the boss. It keeps us from taking risks. Yes, regret. Regret is a big one. Regret, when people avoid regret, it's really a good thing because you're the risk taker. So it's interesting how, again, the information of our emotions make us a different way. Okay, so I have 50% of your answers, so I'm going to share the results. And as you can see, most of you, 91% of you, try not to feel angry. And what else? And let's see what's a close second. 62% of you try not to feel frustrated. And 48% of you do not want to feel rejected. So let's go back to our slides. And let's talk a little bit about the cycle of the caregiver. Now, Margarita got ahead of me. And to be emotionally intelligent and emotionally healthy, we try not to avoid emotion. We try to work at managing emotion. Now, those emotions that you avoid in yourself, you are also trying to stop in your students. And that is why a lot of the time when a child is angry or when a child is frustrated, instead of going in with care, you try to do a behavioral prompt to stop it. And in social emotional learning, we are not stopping emotion. We are learning to manage emotion. But why can't you just help them manage emotion? Well, because of the cycle of the caregiver. And again, I define caregivers as parents, teachers, coaches, extended family, and friends who are in the child's life in multiple ways, right? So you start out super happy, excited about your class, excited about what you're going to do with your students. And then your students come in and they're very, 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 very happy, but they get upset. They get frustrated. They get angry. And that is no fault of you, the teacher. Why? Because very young learners and young learners are practicing how to manage their emotional world. They're practicing social emotional skills, and they're just developing, and they don't do a lot of things that adults do. So it's no fault of your own, right? They get upset. And when that happens, you get upset as well, right? So When you get upset, some of you try to make the students happy, and you end up in this cycle. Now, waiting for your students to be okay makes it so that you get stuck in a behavioral loop and an emotional loop, right? So it is important that when they're upset, social emotional learning is about helping them manage the emotion, not stop the emotion. It's a subtle difference. And how do you do that? By learning about yourself. Books, webinars, television. All of a sudden, my realm, the social emotional realm, is really popular. But why it's so difficult to bring social emotional learning in the classroom is because for you to be able to teach the student, right? Sean wrote it, we are their role model. Exactly. So you guys just told me, I avoid anger, I avoid frustration, I avoid regret. And that means that you're trying to stop those emotions. Emotions bubble up no matter what. Here's a fun fact. Emotions are a 90-second synapse in the brain, 1 minute and a half, right? So it is important for us to understand that it's just a reflex. It's just like blinking, right? So if I blew air on your face and I said, don't blink, that's me asking someone to stop feeling. So again, as an educator, as a caregiver, I need you to work on your own emotional experience, your own social emotional skills, and your own way of being in the world so that then you can help yourself to be happy and then they can be happy. And then again, because they're little and you're setting a boundary and you're making them go to, practice the potty. For those of you that have very young learners, they get upset. That's upsetting to you because you're empathic. And then boop, we start the cycle. So the healthy cycle is to do the entire circle. Okay, so this is why social emotional learning and teaching our children, if you're parents, how to feel is so incredibly difficult. So, okay, now you're like, no, what did you just do? I feel horrible now. Welcome to my world, right? Like, what do I do? How do I support my students? How do I learn about me? How do I do that little, line through, right? Well, once a week, almost definitely when you're feeling out of sorts in the classroom, follow this routine. First, ask yourself, what am I feeling and what does it remind me of? So, what does it remind me of helps you understand it. Usually when we ask ourselves, what does this remind me of? You'll get like a memory of when you felt this in the past. And usually your brain gives you the memory of the worst time that you felt it in the past, right? So, and then you act today like what happened back then. Why do you do that? The brain is efficient. It uses past information to predict future experiences, right? So we have to be mindful to be available, right, to them, and to be aware of how the past is influencing the present. So sometimes in your classroom, something happened, and then you're bringing up a memory from your first year of teaching. And first year teaching is very different than 10th, 7th, 15th year of teaching. So it is very important not to get stuck in a past experience and stay in the present. So pull this out, take a picture of this slide, right? Because this is something that I want you to have in your back pocket. Remember what I said, feelings are information, not direction. Some of us feel sad, and instead of sitting with the emotion and wondering why we're sad and wondering what it reminds us of, we just go eat ice cream, right? That's using a feeling as direction rather than information. And the pause and reflect. So let's practice this one, because a lot of new science, and especially new science about the brain, is telling people So it's telling people that you have to meditate to have a healthy brain. But for most of us, when we think about meditation, we think it's a monk in a mountain, saying ohms, for 3 days, right? No, meditation can be as quick as this. Ready? Everybody find your feet. Are they on the ground? Are they underneath you on your sofa? Are they in front of you in your bed because you're watching me from your bed? Are you at your desk? Right? Find your feet. Now, change your posture. Straighten up. Now, breathe. Breathe in 4. Breathe out 4. You can do this feet, posture, breath once to feel better. You could do it while you're walking in the classroom and your classroom starts getting messy, right? Remember, I know those classrooms, all of a sudden the energy is like, you're definitely can do it while in the virtual screen when you see that the children are off, right? So find your feet, change your posture, and breathe. If you do that multiple times a day, you'll add up to the 7 minutes that neurologists and brain scientists, yes, Sean, students horsing around. Now, I've seen a lot on the chat that you guys are talking about distracting emotion, meaning like trying to think about something else, trying to not pay attention to it, is not social emotional learning. Remember, social emotional learning, when we're talking about the feeling part, the emotional intelligence part, we have to manage emotion. And to manage emotion, we must name it, feel it, and feel better and recuperate from it. So feel better about it. So no, distracting yourself with television is not managing emotion. You can if it's very hurtful. All right, ready? Ta-da! Pop quiz! So, everybody, do you remember the 3 skills of being, compassionate, and the 3 skills of helping your students? Type them in the chat. What are the 3 skills? Go for it. I'm going to have a little tea. Wow. Does anybody remember the 3 skills for compassionate and mirroring them? Yes, you got it, Gamsi. You got it. Mirroring them. That's right. That was number 1. So be vulnerable. Yes, Louine. Yes. Oh, wait. Anna got all 3. Yes, mirroring. Encourage can fit into mirroring. I like how you added a new word. Heba. So let's see. Predictable. Yes. Okay. Somebody else got all 3. Hurrah. A+. Mirror your students, be vulnerable, be predictable. That's right. I think that was a Greek name. I couldn't pronounce it. Predictable. Yes. Mirror, being vulnerable and predictable. Yes. Good job. All right. Perfect. So yay. Most of you put it in. I like it. Yes. Mirroring them, being vulnerable with them, and being predictable with them, right? And again, what's an example of mirroring them in the very young learner classroom? Javier is playing with Susana. Javier gets frustrated because Susana is playing with the dinosaur that he always wants to play with every single day that he comes into the classroom. If you mirror Javier, you don't say, Javier, we share. No, that's the predictable part. First, we mirror Javier. You put up a mirror to him. Javier, you're so sad. You want the dinosaur. Be vulnerable. Come on, I know how sad you are, and I also see how frustrated you are. But remember, we have a rule about sharing, right? And then now be predictable. If you're feeling very sad or jealous, remember that we use the cozy corner to feel better, right? So a lot of teachers in the classroom just go to the predictable phase. But don't forget the mirroring phase, and don't forget the vulnerability phase. Also, vulnerability is like your facial expression. Oh, Javier, you're so sad. You always play with the dinosaur, but Susana's using it now, right? Vulnerable, predictable, quick, quick, quick. Oh, adolescence. Somebody gave me an adolescent question. I love the adolescents. You can mirror an adolescent. Right now, a lot of them are like, this is horrible. I don't want to do virtual learning. To mirror, put up the mirror, put up el espejo. I could only say it in Spanish. I wish I knew all the other languages. El espejos. Ready? Oh, yes. Virtual learning is very hard, Jose. I also, have been managing how to teach you guys virtually. But remember that this is what we're going to do while we do virtual learning. We mirror them. Yes, you're right. Virtual learning is hard. I was vulnerable. I know. I had to kind of figure out a new program and be predictable. But this is how we're going to do learning. Okay, so let's keep going. Let's keep going. So if you practice the 3 skills that a lot of you got in the little pop quiz, now you can do it for your students. So again, take a picture of this, click. And this is really for, I know that a lot of you teach very young learners and young learners. And this is for when a child has just completely fallen apart, right? And in a virtual setting, I don't want you to be, a lot of teachers tell me, Lina, this is, of course, makes a lot of sense, but I can't stop my class to do this. And I will tell you that doing this will take you about 1 to 4 minutes or less. And your entire classroom will have an experience of social emotional learning, because those of you that work with very young learners, you know that most of what they pick up when you're teaching them is what they see and what they experience, right? And why? This thing right here, this organ, the brain, is an experiential organ, right? It's like going to a gym. It's like going al gimnasio, right? You build the muscle of how to manage an emotion, not stop or distract an emotion, manage an emotion by seeing it in somebody else, right? Or by experiencing it themselves. So right now in a virtual setting, this is going to be a little bit difficult, right? But I would recommend that you stop and you say, Johnny, you are getting bored. I can see that you're getting bored because you're looking up into the sky, right? Is that what you're feeling? So ask them. This is being vulnerable with them. This is them being vulnerable with you, and you being vulnerable with them. Don't judge their emotion. I understand that it's very different to be on the computer than being in the classroom. We all miss being in the classroom, right? This is good stuff. And then predict. Remember, so you can teach your children, when you see that all of a sudden everybody's going like this, a lot of your students are going to be like, doo-doo-doo, or they're going to be like moving like this on their chair, like this, or they're going to be like this, right? When you see that, teach them find your feet, change your posture. Let's breathe in 4. Let's breathe out 4. Teach them that, or teach them a song. Teach them was like, let's listen. Find something that's predictable that brings them back here. And finally, what's really important is come up with action steps, right? So help the child say, so going back to Javier, who doesn't want to share the dinosaur that he always uses when he comes into the classroom, right? And you can say to him, okay, next time when somebody else is playing with the dinosaur, what can we do? So take a picture, because this is your map to be in the midst of teaching them social emotional skills. Now, I want everybody to take a moment and read this for yourself. And in Miami, it's 9:30 a.m., so I'm having a morning tea. I saw that somebody said that I was having the afternoon tea. It's 9:30 in the morning in Miami. So read that for yourself. So, why is it so hard sometimes? Why do you want to go home sometimes and just like get in the shower and wash off the day, or eat a lot of ice cream, or drink alcohol if you drink it? That's not a good habit, right? Because if you're teaching young children, you feel in conflict with them every time you set a boundary. Not all of them, but a good chunk of them don't want to do it, don't want to do what you said. So it feels like you're having conflict with your student. You feel rejected because they're like, they look down, and they're like, oh, they do this, or they're like, oh, this is stupid, or say something mean, right? And that's their immaturity in managing emotion, right? So it's important for us as adults. It's hard to be a teacher because you're constantly dealing with conflict. But I'm going to share something with you, right? Know that that child is not managing their frustration. It's frustration that they're feeling, and they're not rejecting you. They're not in conflict with you. They're in conflict and in rejection of the task. And all of you are English learner teachers. Ouch. Young children who are Black and white have a very hard time learning a second language when they are not practicing that language at home. Why? They want to feel successful 100% of the time. Have you ever played a board game? Have you ever played a board game with a 5, 7, 8, 10-year-old? What happens when they lose? They're like, oh, it's not fair, right? It's not fair. Okay. When you're teaching a second language and they can't express themselves as quickly as they do in their native language, what you're managing in them is not so much the language. You're managing the emotion and the feeling of embarrassment and frustration. That's why you get the back talk. That's why you get all the because they're young and they want to be able to express themselves, and it's incredibly frustrating for those children that are leaders in your classroom. Okay, so time for another poll. Ready? Okay, I'm gonna open poll number 2. And let's see if I can get to it. Poll number 2. Okay, so please answer. Which one of these are difficult to manage for you, right? Which one of these are difficult to manage for you? Mark as many as you need. Oh, Margarita said something important that a lot of teachers say to me. Well, they're getting taught one thing at home and another thing at school. This is true. But I want you to do the math. Maybe not right now while we're doing virtual learning, but your students are sometimes, they're with you from 8 to 3 p.m., right? 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, 7 times 5 days. They're with you 35 hours, right? And in the weekend, they're with their parents 72 hours. So it's equal. Children, if you keep your routine consistent, can have one experience at home and one experience in the classroom. And that child that has a harder time in your classroom, that's the one that I want you to touch once we're in the classroom again, and in virtual learning, speak to the most. It's the opposite. Because remember, they need you to mirror them. They need you to know that you understand that they're frustrated. They need to understand that you know that they're sad and scared. Okay. Let's see. Okay. What is the winning? Self-management so far. 57% of you. Decision-making. 66% of you have a hard time with decision-making. So that is common. And while you guys are still answering, we'll take it to the 50-minute mark. Why? Why is decision making something that a lot of adults can't do? It's because for a lot of adults, we have been taught to stop feeling. We have been taught to look outside of ourselves to get a reward, right? Those of you that were brought up in a way where it was, your parent was a little bit punishing, they taught you not to think for yourself. They taught you to look at them to make your decisions. Now, different cultures have different ways of doing this, right? Like you heard me in the beginning. Well, maybe some of you heard me. I am Colombian, but I was brought to the United States when I was 7. So in Colombia and in a lot of countries around the world, we are collectivists. We think about the group first, and we make our decisions based on the group. So that can be hard because we feel that impact. In the United States, in the UK, in Germany, they're more individualistic, thinking about the self. So they have an easier time with decision making because they don't have as much influence from external pieces. So be mindful about how you were taught to make decisions. Were you taught to ask somebody else? And be mindful how you are giving independence and autonomy to your students in the classroom. All right, so 75% of you have a hard time decision making. And I also know right now in pandemic times, decision making has become incredibly difficult, primarily because we don't have all the information. None of our governments are mirroring us. They're not letting us know, I know how hard this is. Very few governments in the world are telling us, their vulnerabilities. They're trying to act like they know what they're up to. But they're definitely not being predictable, right? And and those countries that have been predictable have been more successful in the pandemic. So, countries like New Zealand, countries like South Korea, they were very predictable. They told their community exactly what is happening. So think about the 3 skills. Even our government isn't doing it. And if they did it, we would all feel safer. So again, your social emotional skills are at play right now during this pandemic. All right, so I'm going to share the results. Everybody can see that 75% of you is in the decision making is what hurts the most. Now, why did I ask you about this? Well, because remember I told you I was going to tell you why social emotional learning. What is the result of spending from when you're in early childhood, when you're a very young learner, all the way to when they are teenagers? Well, you achieve self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and decision making. Because we must be able to know what we're feeling so that it helps us with our thoughts, so that it helps us choose our actions. So, all of you guys as teachers, again, Lina, wow, this is why social emotional learning and thinking about it in my classroom is so difficult. How am I going to teach decision making when it's hard for the littles, right? When it's hard for me. And again, that's why you educate yourself. That's why you're on a webinar. That's why you're getting information. And it's a little bit easier with the littles, but nobody in your classrooms, if you have students younger than 24 years old, because that's how long it takes to build this, they're not doing this. They're not self-aware. They don't have self-management 100% of the time. They don't have social awareness 100% of the time. They don't have relationship skills, and they definitely don't have decision making. They are developing them. What does that mean? Think of a 11-month-old, a 12-month-old, an 18-month-old, and they're pulling up on the furniture, right? All over the house, right? They're learning to walk. When they fall, an adult goes, okay, try again. And they put their hands there, right? So we don't get mad with them. We don't tell them that they are in red light. For those of you that have been using the street light to show the students' behavior, you teach them how. So again, social emotional learning is about teaching them how to manage self-awareness, how to manage themselves, their social skills, their relationship skills, and their decision making. Again, I'm a psychotherapist in my day-to-day. You do way more psychology than me in every moment that you're with your students. So, how might they act? Let's talk about the kids. So, to have what we talked about before, right? To be self-aware, self-management, social, relationship skills, and decision-making, these are the skills, right? So to walk, I have to pull up, go on the furniture, and then try to take steps, right? So to end up with social management, self-management, self-assessment, and awareness, decision-making, all the things that we talked about before, right? They have to tolerate their frustration. They have to delay gratification. So what does that mean? The best example for an 8-year-old and younger of not being able to delay gratification, especially now in the world of the virtual school for these young learners, is when you ask something and then they're like, they burst out the answer, right? Because especially that leader student in your class that's like, oh, da, 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 right? And they speak, and then they don't allow the more observant one, the little quiet one, the little observant one to speak up for themselves, right? That's a form of delay of gratification. Or when you are in an actual classroom and you tell them, okay, it's time to line up, and then one races to get to the front of the line. That child is showing you that they are working and managing not very well, delaying the gratification, delaying the pleasure of being the person in the front of the line. By the way, if any of you have credit cards in your wallet, you are not delaying gratification either. You are spending money you haven't made yet. And that's the version of delay of gratification in adults. Impulse control. Chapter 5, they're working on that, right? Children between 5 and 8 only hold their impulses 40% of the time. So if they have 10 interactions, four of those interactions, they have impulse control, but the other 6, zip, 0. This is why you are very tired at the end of your day. Empathy. Okay, so empathy is the ability to imagine or feel somebody else's point of view and emotions. It is the ability to think and understand what somebody is feeling, right? So the first one is called emotional empathy. I feel what you're feeling. The second version of empathy is cognitive empathy, right? Being able to say and understand and think about what you might be feeling. And then finally, the desire to assist. Children are building that muscle in early childhood. Your students 10 and younger are rarely empathic because they cannot manage their emotions yet. So the first thing I have to do to be empathic to somebody else is to be willing to feel what they're feeling, right? And most young children, they're afraid of feeling sad. They're afraid of feeling frustrated. They're afraid of feeling scared, just like you guys, some of you, right? So that's why they have a little bit of a harder time doing empathy, but they are learning to do that, right? And then social reciprocity. I always tell parents of children in the kindergarten, first, second grade, if your child comes home and says, nobody's my friend, I don't have any friends, and your child is a leader, they like to be in control, they like to be in charge, there's a high possibility that that little person in the kindergarten, in the first grade, in the second grade, right, 8 and younger, is telling their parents they don't have friends because they experience their friends as mean because they want to play kitty cats and their friends want to play trucks. So if the friends don't change their play, then they're mean and they don't have any friends, right? So that falls under social reciprocity. Young children, especially children under 8, are learning social norms and social rules. They don't have them yet, right? They get better at social norms and social rules at 10. So a lot of the things that you imagine that your students can do, they really can't. They're still, imagine them pulling up on the furniture, toddling on the furniture, and taking their first step. So that's why I go back to the beginning of the presentation. How are you doing? How do you understand that? And that's a big deal. Okay, so what does it look like in young learners? I've given you a lot of examples, but I threw some in here, not being able to do those skills. They're always asking you the rules. They're repeating things. They need to have mastery of what's happening around them. They have a very active imagination, especially the 4-year-olds, right? I love being in a classroom of 4-year-olds, and then they tell you this beautiful, fantastical story. It's like Gabriel Garcia Marquez, like magical realism. They're like, Miss Lina, I live with Aladdin, and in Aladdin, we don't follow rules, right? So it was like this beautiful fantasy way that a little 4-year-old was telling me, I don't like the rule that you're setting in the classroom, right? They have big feelings. They have big tantrums. Those of you that teach 2.5 to 4.5-year-olds, ready for the horrible statistic? Here goes. 3 major tantrums per hour, 1 minor conflict every 3 minutes. A tantrum is or teacher. That's a tantrum. That's 3 an hour, okay? For 2.5 to 4.5-year-old. And a minor conflict is, no, you mean, I don't, right? Why are they doing that? They're learning social reciprocity. They're learning self-management. You are helping them. So what are the 3 skills? Mirror them, right? Be vulnerable with them and be predictable with them, right? And so these are great examples. Let's get to the next one. What it looks like in a young learner classroom, right? So the children 5 and older. Okay, this is the one. Somebody earlier wrote, oh yeah, the back talk is so annoying. Okay, language is powerful. And I know that I'm talking to the choir, right? Because you teach languages, and language is powerful. Let's not call it back talk, and let's call it defending and debating. Why? Children 5 to 9 think in black and white, good and bad, pleasure, pain. So if they make a mistake, if they think that they said, I mean, in your classes, if they pronounced the English word incorrectly, they will feel like they made a mistake. So now they're bad. So that now they're not smart, and they will defend themselves. This age group, they lie so much. And they lie because when they get in trouble, they feel guilty, and they put the emotion of guilt in the bad bucket. So it is important to be very concrete with them when they have this meltdown, this defense, to look at them, and especially a 4th grader, yes, Sean, to say, right now, you feel like you're not smart because you can't figure out how to write that sentence in English. That's true, right? Mirror, right? That's very concrete. If you don't tell them, yes, it's true, right now you don't feel smart, they can't trust you because their brain is telling them black and white, black and white, black and white. Now you, the adult, gives them the gray. Right now, you can't write the sentence in English, but we are practicing. So practice and feel frustrated for a little bit until you get that done, right? And then that way, yes, I love that, Margarita. Some children say English is wrong when they make a mistake. Yeah, or English is bad. I don't want to learn English, right? Because it's a way for them to not feel embarrassed or hurt, but always mirror. Show them in the mirror that you know what they're feeling. I cannot tell you how much that will change your classroom. It's changing all of you, right? So that is important. Okay, and then finally, ready? I'm gonna have a little tea so that you can read your slide, this slide all by yourself, and I'll explain what's happening here. Expectations. So there is an amazing psychiatrist and speaker and academic in the United States called Dan Siegel, DANSIEGEL. And he is one of my mentors. And I spent 3 days in Malibu, California, learning from him a technique and a psychological model called interpersonal neurobiology. Big words, but it's the study of how the brain develops in relationship, in society, and how it creates itself in biology. And at the end, just like I'm doing right now for you guys, he showed us this chart, and he talked about, a lot of the time the brain gets stuck in one idea, right? And that means that you're here. It's those expectations of like, This is how we're supposed to feel. This is how my class is supposed to go. This is how I'm supposed to answer to my children perfectly, right? Yes, Thais. Daniel Siegel, Dr. Daniel Siegel. Yes. And here it is, right? And then what we have to do is stay out of just one way that your classroom can be and open yourself to the plane of possibility. Meaning that open yourself from now until June 2020 to accept that this school year is messy, to accept that your students cannot self-manage, cannot be self-aware. Love your vulnerability and their vulnerability, and find your feet, change your posture, breathe. 4 counts in, 4 counts out, and a plan for your class, but let go of the expectations and you will be happier. Promise. And so will your students. Okay? That is thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Here are ways that you can find me on the internet and in the social realm, and hopefully I'll get to see you in the social media world.
Maria, Lina, can you hear me?
I can. Hi, Will.
Hi. Oh, thank you so much. That was absolutely superb. Thank you so much.